first built. A DES inspector comes out to his house and is like, "Hey, you never took down that dang tea house." This time, they weren't screwing around.
It wasn't until December 26, 2014, where the tenor of everything changed.
December 26th, the day after Christmas, the dead of winter. At this point, it's been 8 years since DES first cited Forrest Quimby for his illegal deck-dock combo. An official legal document shows up in his mailbox, delivered by certified mail, which laid out the whole history of his complaint and notified him that a lien had been attached to his deed. Basically, he wasn't going to be able to sell his property until he got rid of the deck. This is usually step one in enforcement actions like this. Step two is a big fat fine. All of a sudden, all that outrage and hoping to slip under the radar go out the window. The dream dock is in trouble.
And so we went out and we got a lawyer who pretty much said, the party's over, you might as well remove this before they do fine you. And we hauled this heavy pressure treated wood through 3 to 4 feet of snow to pile it 75 feet or more from we had this huge mountain of pressure treated wood that we couldn't take it out at the time, we just had to pile it up.
By the spring of this year, 17 years after it was built, Forrest Quimby's big, beautiful, illegal deck dock was no more. In its place, there's some bare ground and a humble seasonal dock, 6 feet wide and 30 feet out to the water. Over and over, what I've heard reporting the story is that nobody's particularly happy with it. Do you think I'm characterizing that right?
I do. I do.
This again is Judith Spang, environmentalist and New Hampshire lawmaker who's been watching this situation for over a decade. She says it's a complicated question of how to make these laws work better, but thinks an easy first step would be educating homeowners about the law when they buy shoreland property before they get too deep into the dream.
If you're looking at a property and you nudge your wife and you say, "Hey, we take down some of these trees, we'll have a beautiful view, we'll put up a dock, then we can get our bass boat." You buy it, you're buying a dream that is going to set you up for being in violation. And how far you get down the road in realizing that dream before you're caught, if you ever are, it is kind of a matter of chance.
And so on we go. Property owners either do or don't know the rules, they break them, maybe they're caught, maybe they aren't. The ones who get caught are grumpy, and people who see the ones who get
I just received a rather hefty speeding ticket in the state of Maine, $420. My legislative plates meant nothing to the officer in the state of Maine. It was the fact that suddenly there was a construction zone. There were other cars blasting by me. You know, we all see this kind of thing happening everywhere. There are people who are where they're under violation for shoreline and they're hearing chainsaws off across the lake, and they know that it's happening. And what can DES do even if they find out the tree is down? Now what? That's just the way it works.
Since removing his deck, Forrest Quimby has a new design for his shorefront in mind. He's hoping to replace it with some terraced stonework, some natural landscaping, all of it totally by the books. Oh, here we have a permit properly posted.
Properly posted,
Yeah.
shoreline permit by notification, accepted.
Outside In was produced this week by me, Sam Evans Brown, with help from Maureen McMurray, Taylor Quimby, Logan Shannon, and Megan Tan. Breakmaster Cylinder made our theme. Special thanks to Cheryl Jensen and Tanya Tellman of the Bethlehem Conservation Commission for talking us through their story. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, on Overcast, and Stitcher, wherever you listen. Our website, where you can see a picture of Forrest Quimby's dock as it once stood in all of its illegal glory. That sweet, sweet glory. Is outsideinradio.org. We tweet at Outside In Radio. Outside In is a production of New Hampshire Public Radio. And thanks for listening. Wait, who says that part?
I don't know. I said it before.
You say it. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, I'm Sam Evans Brown, and today we're going to just jump right in. And producer Taylor Quimby is going to tell us a story. And a quick word of warning to listeners, this story is probably going to involve somewhat frequent use of the S word. If you've got kids listening, you might want to turn off. So, this is a story that could start in a lot of places, I think, but we're going to start with this guy named Mike Rafferty.
Yes, I'm Mike Rafferty. I live in Chicago in the Lakeview neighborhood.
He works downtown.
I do computer work for a financial institution here.
And part of his daily commute to work used to take him alongside the University of Illinois Chicago, which is on Halsted Street.
A basic college campus type environment. There's lovely trees and some open green space.
And hanging over the street on the grounds of the campus is this big, beautiful ginkgo tree. Now, have you ever seen one? I think there was one on campus at the college that I went to. They're most recognizable because of their leaves. So their leaves have this very distinctive fan shape that is unlike any other leaf of any other tree. And they're considered to be just incredibly beautiful trees. Got it. Okay, so Mike Rafferty, he walks by this tree every day.
Very pleasant walk most days.
Except in the fall.
These lovely ginkgo trees, which were perfectly nice trees most of the year, would start dropping these smelly,
stinky
pods.
These like fruit berry thingies
down on the sidewalk and grass that I had to walk through.
So what do they look like? Well, the word ginkgo actually means white apricot in Japanese, but I think they sort of look like oversized albino cherries. But yeah, they stink really, really, really bad. They smell like vomit, I guess.
It's like a sewer. It's pretty horrid.
Or some people say they smell like poop.
I've heard the berries called vomit berries, stink berries.
This is Sadie Dingfelder. She's written about ginkgo berries for the Washington Post.
Shit fruit, that's another one. It's just so many. I mean, it's like you walk and it's like little pebbles everywhere.
And not only do they smell like shit, but they're slippery. You step on them, they like coat your shoes.
It would get in the gutter of the street.
They sort of smush under your feet nicely.
Cars would drive through it, smash it, grind it up.
It makes it sound like these sidewalks are like a battlefield.
It is certainly a public nuisance. If you had a family in a home throwing stuff like that out there on the sidewalk, I can pretty much guarantee the city would be there ticketing you every day for doing so.
Now, you may not have put much thought into this, but this tree, it wasn't always here. You know, like every city tree was planted right where it stands for a very specific purpose. It's not an accident. So why would you plant a shit fruit tree in your scenic boulevard? Well, that's kind of the question, isn't it? Yeah, I guess that's our question. From New Hampshire Public Radio, this is Outside In, a show about the natural world and how we use it. And today, producer Taylor Quimby has a story for us. I'm going to tell you how one American city has been grappling with the ginkgo stink for over a century. And I'll ask why, if this tree is such a colossal pain in the nostrils, why are people still planting it? Is it worth it?
And I might answer that question.
So, shit fruit.
I thought that street was called Fuck Drive.
That is the voice of Tom Kimmerer. Now, he is a tree
Drive,
physiologist,
okay.
and he's our ginkgo expert for this story.
We can call it food for purposes. It smells like dirty sweat socks, and that's not a coincidence. The odor is the odor of butyric acid, which is what accumulates in dirty sweat socks.
Butyric, yeah. Do we know what that stands for? The word? Yeah. No. I don't even know how to spell it. Yeah. How do you pronounce the acid?
Butyric acid.
Butyric acid.
Butyric, butyric acid.
Now, Tom explained to me that one reason that this issue is so divisive is that not all ginkgos have this berry problem. And that's because, and this is very important, ginkgos are what we call dioecious. What does it mean?
Dioecious, that is, they have sexes on separate trees. So there are male ginkgos and there are female ginkgos.
And only the female trees produce the
females
berries.
are always the ones.
Now, dirty sweat socks aside, there are a ton of reasons to plant a street tree. They beautify the city, of course. They reduce traffic speeds, they increase walkability, they reduce crime, all of which means better economic growth in downtown areas. And like I said, ginkgos are gorgeous. You remember Sadie?
Hi, I'm Sadie.
I remember Sadie. Well, Sadie lives in Washington, D.C., and she loves ginkgos.
Since they drop all their leaves all at once in the fall, they just carpet the city sidewalks with gold, you know? It's like living in the gilded capital. It's really beautiful.
Now, D.C. has had a pretty sizable population of ginkgos since at least the 1870s.
Our Department of Agriculture was an early pioneer. They loved ginkgos. They planted 90 ginkgos that lined the pathway to their front doorsteps.
Today, there are thousands of ginkgos in D.C., including 925 females. So, in the fall of 2014, the female ginkgos started fruiting, as they do every year. The sidewalks got clogged with shit fruit, and Sadie decides to write about it for the Washington Post-Express, which got her wondering, how many other reporters have written about this same problem over the years?
I decided to look back into our archives, and
She says that the newspaper has published an article referencing its ginkgo trees every year.
well, at least one since 1904.
Here's just one example.
December 27th, 1914, it says, "There's not much spooning in the moonlight around the ginkgos after the first part of October, unless a lass and a swain happen to be employees of a tannery or some other highly scented place."
News writing's really gone downhill since those days. I know, hasn't it?
In DC, you can actually, if you get 60% of the people on your city block to sign a petition, you can get a female ginkgo tree removed and replaced with a male ginkgo tree. Which seems like sexism, obviously. But it's also like very divisive in neighborhoods. Like some people, you know, are so offended by these berries that it seems like a no-brainer. And other people are like, these are beautiful trees. Like, you know, we need to protect them, not cut them all down.
So let's recap here. In Chicago, you have one guy complaining about a stinky ginkgo tree, but it's not really a widespread problem, so nobody really cares.
As far as I know, the trees are still there.
Sorry, Mike. In D.C., you can have a female ginkgo tree removed if you can corral the whole block into signing a petition.
That's not easy to do.
In some smaller cities, Iowa City, Easton, Pennsylvania, for example, they've just chopped most of their female ginkgos down or banned them from being planted altogether. But probably the most ridiculous solution comes from Seoul, South Korea, where the ginkgo is actually the official tree. They planted thousands of them in like the early 70s. They started getting complaints every fall until they started cutting them down. Now, I've read different accounts. It looks like they still have at least 114,000 ginkgos on their streets. Many of them female. Every year, they deploy more than 440 workers who pick all of the berries before they fall to the ground. This costs thousands of dollars. It is a huge manpower problem. It's crazy.
So, the fruit's not edible, is it?
Well, actually, there is a nut inside the fruit that is edible, and apparently it's a delicacy in Asia. So you will hear about towns where you've got one segment of the population that's complaining about the trees and arguing that they should all get cut down, and you've got another group of people that don't mind at all. In fact, they're collecting the berries, smell be damned, processing them, and eating the nuts.
Yeah, entrepreneurs.
But you know, there are also a lot of people who just decide to take matters totally into their own hands. So you remember Tom Kimmerer?
I'm speaking to you from the University of Kentucky campus, and there was a female ginkgo at a fraternity house. Late one night, the boys girdled the tree and killed it. And I think that's pretty common for people to vote with their chainsaws against female ginkgos.
This is kind of sad.
That is kind of sad. I mean, it's sort of like, you know, if there was a smelly person, you don't want sort of like vigilantism against smelly people.
Yeah.
We've all stepped in dog poop at some time. And we try to get people to clean up after their dogs, but they don't always. There's always dog poop in our landscape. We don't say, oh, there's dog poop in our landscape, let's get rid of all the dogs. Now, that's what we're saying about ginkgos.
So cutting them down is sad, but if they're so controversial, why would a city want to plant them in the first place?
So to answer that question, you have to go back a couple hundred years.
Yes, and it actually starts in England in the early to middle 19th century.
And at that time, there was like more than 1 million London residents. All of them are burning coal.
You read about the London fogs, or you see them in Sherlock Holmes videos. That wasn't fog, that was smog, that was air pollution.
And it was so bad that it was like killing people because of respiratory illnesses. But it was also killing all the trees in the city.
Ginkgos had been found in China, found by Western botanists. They'd always been known by Chinese botanists.
And they planted them at Kew Gardens, which is like this big, gorgeous botanical garden in London that's been there for ages. And those ginkgo trees just thrived where all these other trees were dying.
So it gained the reputation in Europe as being a tree that tolerated air pollution. It also tolerated the kinds of soil compaction and other problems that city trees often have.
So ginkgos are these superhuman survivor trees. In fact, after we dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima during World War II, there were 6 ginkgo trees that were located right near the epicenter of the blast. And you can see pictures where, I mean, the landscape is just destroyed. But those trees sprouted new leaves shortly after the blast, and they're still alive today.
That's insane.
Yeah, and it's a fact. Yes.
So they're just incredibly burly. They can handle nuclear bombs. They can handle horrific coal pollution. They can handle terrible soil.
Yeah, and aside from humans, they can also handle all of the living things that might potentially try and kill them too.
What do you mean?
Well, ginkgos are what we call a living fossil. You know what that means?
We thought it was extinct, but it's not?
Not quite. It means that it's a living species that is also on the fossil record. Because that living species has changed so little that it existed in a nearly identical state thousands, or in some cases millions of years ago. So alligators, sharks, horseshoe crabs, those are all different types of living fossils. And ginkgo is one of our oldest living fossils on record. Ginkgo's ancestors go back like 270 million years, which is 40 million years before the first dinosaurs. Back then, at its height, ginkgo covered the northern hemisphere.
So basically what ginkgo did was it retreated from being worldwide in distribution to these little tiny patches in China, and essentially outlived all their enemies. I'm sure at one time, I'm sure that you could look at fossilized ginkgo leaves and find evidence of insects that fed on them and fungi that grew on them. Those are all gone now. They have effectively no insect or disease problems.
And that really does matter. So even if you're not in, 19th century London, or you're like in post World War II Hiroshima, like urban trees that live on our city streets do not have a long life expectancy.
Trees that are capable of living hundreds or even thousands of years
in a forest
may only survive for a few years in the urban landscape.
There's the soil compaction,
damaged by mowers,
there's diseases,
damaged by fertilizers and herbicides,
bugs,
pesticides.
There was a study from 2006 that showed that as many as 63% of urban trees in Philadelphia were dead or removed within 10 years. Ginkgo is like this dinosaur, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex that got plucked from the past and stuck on a savanna. Today, nothing knows how to kill it.
It's the apex tree.
It is the apex tree of millions of years ago, and somehow still today.
Yeah.
And as far as a lot of urban foresters are concerned, like, there's really no downside to planting a ginkgo as your street tree. And this is why Manhattan, Tokyo, big cities around the world are planting hundreds, and in some cases thousands of ginkgos.
Planting ginkgo trees, just the one exception of the stink berries, and only the females produce the stink berries. Then why not just plant males?
Female until it matures, and that could take like 20 years. So what plant nurseries do is they find a male tree and they clone it. Technically it's called grafting. It's not a very complicated process. But this way anyway, nurseries can sell a city hundreds or even thousands of young trees, all of them exact copies of the male that they originally cloned in the first place. So that sounds pretty good. Yeah, but once you start digging into the ginkgo question, you'll find a number of cities
who thought they were planting all certified male clones in the 80s or the 90s, only to find, 20 years later, some of the trees are female.
So are the nurseries lying or something?
That's a possibility, but probably unlikely in most cases. It's also possible that the nurseries have just screwed up the grafting process and they're accidentally selling a few female trees here and there. But there is another reason that even if they clone the trees perfectly, cities will still sometimes end up dealing with the shit fruit.
And that is...
Well, first, let me ask you a question. Have you ever seen Jurassic Park, Sam?
So Jurassic Park used to actually be my favorite movie, and as a 12-year-old, I used to watch it, finish it, and then rewind it to watch it.
Measure that they had so that the dinosaurs would not breed on the island. The containment measure was that they made sure they only had female dinosaurs.
We control their chromosomes. It's really not that difficult.
You know exactly what we're talking about.
And Jeff Goldblum, the guy, he's a very cool, like hip mathematician character, was all like, if there's one thing that evolution taught us,
it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free, it expands to new territories, and it crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but there it is. You're implying that a group composed entirely of female animals will breed? No, I'm simply saying that life finds a way.
And of course, later in the movie, Grant, played by Sam Neill, and those two little kids are, trucking through Jurassic Park. They're all beat up.
You know what this is?
And sure enough,
it's a dinosaur egg. The dinosaurs are breeding.
So just to be clear, in Jurassic Park, you have a population of genetically cloned organisms, all of them bred to be female, but then some of them spontaneously change sex, and they start producing offspring. And, well, basically, that's what happens with the ginkgo trees.
They just switch. There's some that just switch.
Trees, like fish, occasionally change sex. We don't know the frequency of that sex change in ginkgos, but my suspicion is that most of the female ginkgos that we see in the landscape today were actually planted as males.
But regardless, this is all one way of saying that no matter how reliable the nursery is, like no matter how well you clone the males, no matter if you spray the trees, doesn't matter how hard you shake them, like you cannot guarantee with all our human ingenuity that we can only plant male trees and get what we want out of a ginkgo without a chance of getting what we do not want, which is a bad spot.
Nature wins.
Yeah.
Malcolm was right. I found a way.
And they're planting them here in Concord, right?
Yeah. So NHPR studio, where we make the show, is in Concord, New Hampshire, just less than a mile from downtown. And Concord is in the middle of a big downtown revitalization project. So I actually checked the planting plan, and there are 12 ginkgos that are going to be going up in the spring, maybe a 5-minute walk from the station.
So depending on how often that gender bender trick works, then there's a chance that maybe just like one or two of these trees could change sex and become female.
Yeah. I guess I've been thinking about this, and I am secretly hoping that one of them is female.
Because you just want to experience it. You want to broaden your horizons by sniffing the shit fruit.
Yeah, but also like there's a part of me that thinks, how awesome is this? Like, how awesome is this dinosaur of a tree that produces a fruit that once upon a time may have been eaten by a stegosaurus and spread around that way? Like, that is the point. The point of the smell is probably to attract some sort of animal that is long extinct that would eat it, then go somewhere else and spread the seeds.
Oh, so that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Like, why this is advantageous doesn't even really smelly. That might smell delicious to a stegosaurus.
Exactly. And so there's something about the fact that this tree exists in our landscape at all that is so incredible. And rather than just see it as like an ornament to be, strung up for our convenience, I want to think of it as a uncontrolled living organism that is both beautiful and smelly and reminds us of our place in the world. Because ginkgos, as incredibly successful as they were historically speaking, they are, for all practical purposes, extinct in the wild.
Amsler Springs.
But there are thousands and thousands of them across cities all over the place. This is like Jurassic Park. It's like a reminder of the world that used to be here.
It's like driving through the 1970s and going back into the 1960s.
I think if you were to put it to me, with all, you know, my other biases that are built in, I would say that I would argue for not planting ginkgos in places. Because they're cool, you know, and if I saw one, I'd be like, hey, that's neat, and I would tell people all these things that I've learned just now. But at the same time, it just feels like there's so many reasons why it's out of place. Like, it's in the wrong millennia, it's on the wrong continent, you know, nothing's eating it anymore. It's sort of like this, you know, it's like Encino Man.
Well, we'll just agree to disagree.
Outside In was produced this week by Taylor Quimby with help from me, Sam Evans-Brown, Molly Donahue, Maureen McMurray, Logan Shannon, and Megan Tan.
I spoke with a ton of people that did not end up in this story, so special thanks to Jonathan Law, Kevin Myers, Michelle Phipps-Evans, Zachary Hall, Carolyn Milheiser, and Nancy from Black Forest Nursery, who's definitely trying to sell me a ginkgo tree.
People looking for a shade tree, a ginkgo is a good tree to get. They grow fairly fast and dense shade.
But you didn't buy it. No. If you want to learn more about the science and history of ginkgos, check out Ginkgo, the Tree That Time Forgot by Sir Peter Crane.
Breakmaster Cylinder made our theme.
Subscribe to the show on iTunes, on Overcast, or wherever you download your podcasts.
Our website, where you can see pictures of ginkgo trees, shit fruit, and see a huge collection of articles about the smell, is outsideinradio.org.
Follow us on Twitter at Outside In Radio.
Outside In is a production of New Hampshire Public Radio.
Allegheny National Forest. Salmon Creek Road.
that in because of a few slow days.
These are crab apples. Muzette Road, National Forest Boundary, 3 miles. This means we're into the forest 3 miles. I haven't hiked the 3 miles back to the National Forest Boundary, so today I'm going to hike from this area, which is on, I don't know if this is Salmon Creek Road, I guess. Salmon Creek Road to the National Forest Boundary and back. Hopefully get a new section of North Country Trail, and I've never hiked before. Excited. So check out the North Country Trail in Forest County, Pennsylvania. No, I have been here before. It's just been a really long time, but I haven't done it in a while. Alright, this is has hikes up here. There's the Answer Springs Shelter. This is where hikers can stay. I'm now hiking the North Country Trail in the National Forest. We've got areas here. Nice tin roofs on these ones up here. There's the hiker box. Okay, I signed the North Country Trail hiker book in the Ansler Springs Shelter, and here's what I wrote. October 15th, 2017, 2:45 p.m. Fine fall day to be hiking the North Woods on the North Country Trail in Pennsylvania. I came from Wexford, PA, north of Pittsburgh, to hike with the Clarion North Country Trail Association hikers. We hiked 7 miles. I think it was from Sarvey Mill Road to Highland Drive. That hike ended 1 hour ago, and I still need to hike more. It is 76 degrees Fahrenheit, breezy, and mostly cloudy. Storms are brewing, but not supposed to whip through until late afternoon. Fall colors are dull this year, with half of the trees already bare and others still green. The wind takes each leaf before it has a chance to shine. And that's all I wrote for today. So I will be leaving the Ansler Springs Shelter, heading down about 3 or 4 miles to the south, and hopefully get back before the storm. It's not here anymore. Screw up here. I think the trail turns here. All the leaves are coming down. tonight. I don't want to rush back at 5 o'clock. 3 o'clock now. I'm just for hiking. Somewhere after dark. Already had 7 miles before I started here. Everything's going good. Tiger bucks. Now I see a deer. October 15th, 2017. I forgot what year it was. Mike Ciccone, Wexford, PA, 110 miles southwest, southbound the Allegheny National Forest border and back to Amber Springs before storm, about 76 degrees with very gusty winds. Things are coming out of the trees. I don't know. Storms are coming from a high. Muzette Road and Route 66. Now it's 4.6 miles. Before that was like 3 miles. Wow, the distance actually went up. Creek Road. See Kellettville. That's where I was last, 2 months ago. I was in Kellettville. 13.5. Okay, National Forest Boundary is 2. That's probably about as far as I need to go because I've already been to the other side. It's like 3 total. Oh, where is it? Okay, North Country Trail is over here. Nebraska Bridge. Forest Road 145, 1.2, that's where I started. side of where I turn around today, you'll have to go back and watch a video that I made almost a year ago in the middle of the winter where I started on Route 66 and went across a floating bridge, turned around at the National Forest Boundary. This is pretty excessive with hyperwalks. It's like the third one in like 1.3 miles. October 15th, 2017, Mike Ciccone from Wexford, PA, 77 degrees, very windy with nasty storms coming, 3:20 p.m. Colorado. Forest Road 540A, Route 66, 4.3 miles. 4.3 miles north of the Clarion sections. very remote in here. I think the other side of where I started is like a 13.5 mile section with no road access. Maybe there's one road in there, but I'm not sure. When I hike that section, it's going to be a long day. Different than the section going out of Televille, which is a huge mountain. Beautiful, but it's like you walk 1,000 feet in a mile. That's kind of like what they do in New York. They have a overlapping trail that's white, and then a country trail that's white blazes. video is better than when I edit them out. That's basically like 90% stuff in my creation. Deer is just ahead of me. I keep catching up to him. There's a little gas well at oil pumpers on. Brown signs, I never knew that. They're not allowed in the game lands. But the brown poles are in the National Forest and in other areas. Sometimes you don't have enough trees if you don't have enough trees to know. I've seen this bridge before. Oh, Castle Bridge. It's an Allegheny National Forest one. Wow, look at this. Oh, this is beautiful. Oh my gosh. Creek. Nice little area here. Yes. Coon Creek. goes up here. So Ciccone Creek. Little mountain down there. Remember from Allegheny National Forest is it's really rocky. Big green rock all over the place. Big sandstones. Sometimes we'll have pebbles in them. Conglomerates with little limestone moonstones. There's a cave. That's where a bear could hide out. I don't see any bear in there. Okay. My best hiking is every time I'm just getting better and better at moving really fast through the woods and covering all that area. Another little oil pumpkin. Kind of hummocky here. Oh, this might actually be the National Forest Boundary already. Which is, wow, I didn't think I'd get here this quick. It was just so beautiful. I'll have to check out some one out the other direction. Oh, leave National Forest land. Entering Allegheny National Forest, Muzette Road 1 mile, Kellettville 15.5, New York 96.6. This is the one. It's got kind of a hokey sign. No homicidal vehicles. Okay. They look like sea berries. I don't think they are. Alright. see what's down there. See where they would put a campfire. 7:20 p.m. October 15th, 2017 now. Still no rain, it's still about 76 degrees and moon levels are. It feels like it's not that hot. This way, come in. Trail hiker. Hiker trail. 2 miles from the National Forest Boundary now, so it's 3.2. Probably a 6.4 mile. In addition to the 7, that's 13 point something. Doesn't seem like that much. Wow, that's such a quick, easy 3.2 out and then that. And walk over the car in 16 minutes. Hopefully out there before. With me in the new car and my job waking up and all this Good stuff. 6:30. Oh, I guess that's as far as I should go. I don't want to be on it too late. I've got the work tomorrow. Wish I could stay longer. Forest Road means you gotta commit to 21.2 mile hike or split in half and do 10.6 mile hikes.
Only barely on the radar.
So I just found out something. Salmon Creek Road is also called Forest Road 145 in Allegheny National Forest, so that gets kind of confusing.
Something about
46 days. This is
Alright,
not
I just
what you're
headed down
Route
I feel like 66 south from Gutenville Road, which is the road you go into Allegheny National Forest to turn
Why
onto
didn't
Salmon
one of the
Creek
rangers
Road.
just pull
23
him
more
aside and let
miles
him
to
know that drinking
Clarion.
is not allowed?
I didn't know that existed at all. We sat down and he got the card out of the camera and he starts flipping through these pictures and there were bobcats and mountain lion and deer and all of this had happened in the last couple of weeks and that was the most exciting part of the day. I just said, where do you get these? How does this work? And he said, oh, you just buy them at sporting goods stores, So they're not too expensive. That was about 6 years ago.
So the technology has probably changed a fair bit since then.
Yeah, it has. The very first camera I got had a trigger time of something like 5 seconds, which means that the animal walks by and 5 seconds later. Dennis and I are building custom camera setups with really high quality DSLR cameras. They work the same way. They still have a sensor and it senses on motion. But the images are a lot better quality and they actually have white flashes so that you get color pictures at night as opposed to most of the store-bought cameras have infrared light. So at night the images are black and white. They did water drops and they did phos check drops, and they detected all the radio towers and TV towers on Mount Wilson. I'd actually had cameras there before the fire, and so that was one of the first places that opened up cameras up around in the same area. And
that works. And with me, according to his profile on Facebook, is writer Jonathan Strickland. Will you be my friend? Sure. So yeah, today we're going to talk about Facebook in general and the recent Facebook redesign in particular. In case you have been under a rock for the last 4 years, here's the brief overview of Facebook. It's an online social network. It debuted in 2004, and it was originally geared for college students. So that's what, for the first several months of development, it was pretty much just college kids using this to build up groups of friends. Keep in contact with each other, find out what each other are doing, and all that sort of thing. And then eventually Facebook opened it up to the public in general, and everyone and their dog got a Facebook page. And I'm not kidding, there are dogs with Facebook pages. And cats. And cats as well, they don't discriminate. And then in August of 2006, so 2 years after it debuted, Facebook announced that it was going to open up some of its programming to developers. And a year later, in 2007, they actually allowed developers to use Facebook as a platform. And then that's when you saw this explosion of applications hit Facebook. So if you are the person who has the zombie pirate armored knight Scrabulous Facebook profile, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Unless, of course, that yours is one of the ones affected by Scrabulous. That's true. You might be surprised to know there was basically a knockoff of the game, the popular